This is your election headquarters. You want to stay with us for all in the build-up to the NPP's Super Delegates Congress, which will be happening later this month. Now, away from the NPP party politics, halt all plans to use military force in Niger. That's the call by African workers who say they strongly reject the decision by ECOWAS to use force rather than dialogue to resolve the political crisis in Niger. The African arm of the International Trade Union Confederation, ITUC, believes the move by ECOWAS is ill-conceived and wants the regional body to reverse its course and tactically embrace diplomatic and political dialogue in resolving the impasse. Here are details of that statement issued by ITUC Africa. Now, it says the ECOWAS Commission wishes to inform that the ECOWAS AU-UN mission to the Republic of Niger did not take place on Tuesday, 8 August 2023. The mission was aborted following a late-night communication from the military authorities in Niger indicating their unavailability to receive the tripartite delegation. The planned mission was part of continued efforts to find a peaceful resolution to the current crisis in Niger, as per the decision of the ECOWAS Extraordinary Summit held on 30th July 2023. The community will continue to deploy all measures in order to restore constitutional order in Niger. So that was actually a statement from ECOWAS. I beg your pardon. And earlier I said it was from the ITUC Africa. Well, Secretary General of ITUC Africa, Kwesi Aduamankwa, will join us shortly for a conversation on this. But already on the streets of Accra, the idea of a military intervention in Niger is not resonating with people. They are urging ECOWAS leaders to hasten slowly.
There will definitely be some backlash, Some of the threats, are being directed to some of the ECOWAS member countries from these French countries, So we have to be very, very careful. And it's a very easy thing for them to take advantage of the situation and start looking towards Nigeria, Ghana, and other countries.
The steps that ECOWAS is taking is truly misplaced. It is not something that Africa or Africans should support. I'm not in support of, this ECOWAS intrusion on the land. In as much as Nigeria is connected to Ghana, definitely so what happens to Nigeria, what happens to ECOWAS basically affects Ghanaians.
So if you want to send military personnel or troops to go and then counter their decision, then it implies that Ghana also supports how the country is being governed. And you know how other countries also see Ghana, that our president is not governing as well. You have fire in your backyard, put it off before you come to us. So I think we should act professionally, try to have bilateral talks, professional talks, diplomatic talks.
We also need to do our homework well. Because what is happening, if you listen to the explanation being given by the military junta, you realize that they have a point. Ghana can be affected by going to fight against the leader or the military people who are in charge of the affair for now. They could be affected because it's some people's country. That is what they have chosen to go. Once they have gotten supporters over there, people are supporting what they have done. No, they can victimize. We have people over there, Ghanaians are there. So if they go, they should not forget that we have Ghanaians over there.
Let's now speak to Kwesi Aduamankwa. He's Secretary General of ITUC Africa. They are representing labor groups in all member states. I'm grateful for your time this morning, sir. So we have received a statement, and that statement is indicating your plea, basically, to ECOWAS for it to restrain with this threat of military intervention. What are your exact concerns?
Well, thank you for having me. First of all, as ITUC Africa, we have actually condemned the coup d'etat in Niger and called on the military authorities to return the country to constitutional rule. Because when there are problems, which is in a democracy, it is through dialogue that we seek to resolve these problems. But beyond that, we have come out with a second statement indicating our concern that the proposed military intervention in the event that the military in Niger stays put is not acceptable to us, and we think that it's particularly dangerous for the sub-region, and that it can create political turmoil in the entire sub-region. So that's basically concern.
Do you have any recommendations for ECOWAS? So you say in that statement that you just made reference to, that you've been studying what's been happening in the Sahel region, for example, and you cite killings, kidnappings, and many other effects of some of these military interventions, and even the readiness of other countries within the West African sub-region to support Niger if ECOWAS goes ahead with this threat. Do you have any recommendations for the regional body?
Well, the regional body has to do what it takes to engage the authorities in Niger. You know that primarily what we have now is essentially a club of leaders. A club of leaders. ECOWAS is not a sovereign entity itself. ECOWAS is a club which has been formed by a number of sovereign states. And therefore, in fact, you find that often it is quite difficult for ECOWAS to intervene in whatever happens if it is not going according to how people expect it to go in these different countries. So ECOWAS has to do what it takes to engage more. One, in the different countries, I think that we need to be talking more about this issue and the dangers it poses. And then ECOWAS must reach out to the country itself, the leaders of the country, and if possible, try to reach different segments of the population, find out how to get out of this impasse. But certainly we believe that the military option is an extremely dangerous one for the entire continent. And besides, we are yet to see any country in which democracy has been imposed from without.
Mr. Eduamankwa, so we know the Mali situation, right? And we know how even our own very President Akufo-Addo, when he was chair of ECOWAS, tried to intervene. The former president who passed on, former President Jerry Rawlings, was also called to use his influence to try and help the situation in Mali. We are still in 2023, and the country is still under military rule. So how about those who say that there should be engagement with ECOWAS on how to proceed, right, with this planned military intervention, instead of, we just coming out onto the media and criticizing their plan?
Yeah, but ECOWAS has to be ready to engage with different people. We cannot just get up and go and engage ECOWAS. How are we going to do that? You must have heard, for instance, that even in Nigeria, the Senate refused to do certain things that the executive was going to do, which means that even within sovereign nations, there hasn't been enough consultation and engagement with the levels of power. Now, if ECOWAS is not doing that, how are they going to engage us, or how do we, as civil society, engage them? That is something that it will be interesting to know.
What have your members in Niger, I mean the ITUC members in Niger, what have they been telling you about the coup and this action ECOWAS plans on embarking on?
Well, what is very clear for our members, and in fact, even non-members who are also unionized in Niger, is that the threat of invasion from outside has actually united the entire body of organized labor in Niger, and they do not want a military intervention, because a military intervention is going to be extremely disruptive for lives, both in and around Niger.
So now, I mean, like I said earlier, this is a call to ECOWAS for it to rescind its decision for a military intervention in Niger. But what if the leaders decide to go ahead to deploy? What will the ITUC do?
Well, the ITUC is simply an organization of workers, and already, even before an intervention, I think in your news I just saw protests. I don't know whether it's on the streets of Accra. Yeah, I think in the streets of Accra. Is that Accra?
Which story are you referencing?
There was one in which you made protests. There were protesters against the intervention.
All right. So what you're seeing, if it's what you're seeing on your screens now, it is okay. Well, you're talking about the Vox Pop, right? Yes. We spoke to people on the streets of Accra, right? They were basically sharing their thoughts.
Okay, right. So you can see that people on the streets don't like it, and really, if ECOWAS goes beyond the threat to actually institute a military intervention, all we can do is to mobilize protests around our countries against the military intervention, because really it is extremely dangerous for the subcontinent.
I appreciate your time this morning. Kwesi Aduamankwa is General Secretary of ITUC Africa, and they've released a statement calling on ECOWAS not to go ahead with this planned military intervention in Niger. He's basically been explaining to us why the body disagrees with this move and what the impact will be, and also just told us what will happen if ECOWAS decides to go ahead with this planned action. We've been joined by security analyst Dr. Bonaa as well. Doc, thank you so much for your time. We've been hearing from Mr. Aduamankwa and the concerns by ITUC. Would you say they are fairly grounded?
No, listen.
Hello, Dr. Bonaa. Doc, if you can hear me, I was basically asking if you think these concerns by ITUC, are fairly grounded.
Okay, yes, I can hear you. Good morning. I think your line disconnected. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Dr. Bonaa.
Well, yes, I think I entirely agree with the ITUC. I entirely agree with them. This particular intervention is uncalled for. The leaders of ECOWAS know what they must do to prevent coups like this in West Africa. They are not doing that. They watched on, for instance, for Alassane Ouattara to actually change the constitution to stand a third term. They watched on, Adama Barrow is doing his own thing. They have watched on for, look at what is happening in Senegal. And so this military intervention that has been called, it's just, if you ask me, I would say it's just a Tinubu's declaration of war in ECOWAS, which, as you went around interviewing people in Ghana, largely, majority of Ghanaians don't support any intervention at all. The simple reason is that we could have an internal upheaval or upheavals within the military in our own country if we send our military officers to Niger and we begin to bring them back home in body bags. At least history and war historians will tell you that this is how countries have been destroyed. ECOWAS should take the way of dialogue and negotiations to see. But fundamentally, if you ask me, is ECOWAS not aware that the ordinary citizens in Nigeria, in Ghana, in Niger, in Mali, in Cote d'Ivoire, and the rest don't actually know of, we only know of the existence of ECOWAS on paper. If you ask me again, we have something called the ECOWAS Parliament. The ECOWAS Parliament, who elected who to go and represent who at the ECOWAS Parliament? The ECOWAS Parliament they are selected members of parliament from various ECOWAS countries who go to what is called the ECOWAS Parliament and act just as an advisory body. If we were going to learn from the European Parliament or the EU Parliament, then ordinary citizens should stand elections in Ghana to represent Ghana at the ECOWAS Parliament. That way, these issues could be shared, or these issues could be tabled at a proper constituted ECOWAS Parliament. And so as far as I'm concerned, this particular declaration of war is a proxy war that I would urge the President of the Republic, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, tomorrow they are the heads of state are meeting. He should not sign on to any intervention, because if that happens, we could have our own challenges in this country, and we don't want to get involved. If you look at what has taken place, it is largely in Francophone West Africa, because almost these Francophone West African countries are still under the rule or dictatorship of France.
Right.
So long as they are under the dictatorship of France, issues like, common trade areas, travels and all that, it's not going to be possible.
That's upon
We've been talking about ECO for the sub-region. Why has that not worked? It hasn't worked because then Big Brother France decides which country, amongst the DS would have to do A, B, C, D. So as far as I'm concerned, these Francophone countries are now fighting for their independence.
Right.
And so let's tread cautiously. Or else our leaders, if they are not careful, they will destabilize the sub-region, the entire sub-region. And so we need to be already, without any declaration of war in Niger, go onto the streets of Accra, Shiashi, Jubilee House area, 37, and other areas. You have a lot of Nigerians, children and women and fathers, old people who are, begging for arms on our streets when there's no declaration. So can you imagine when the first bomb is dropped or the first gun is fired and they begin to flood this country? Yes, you can't drive them away, because you went in there to go and destroy their country.
All right, Doc. So that's another conversation. Hello, Doc. Can you hear me?
In this particular intervention.
Hello, Doc. Can you hear me? So I mean, the issue of the ripple effect and the geopolitics will take us to another dimension, right? But there are those who also believe that this decision by ECOWAS is to stump the regional body's authority. We've seen what ECOWAS has tried to do in Mali, for example, and they've still not been able to return the country to democratic rule. So it's as though the body feels threatened, and its image out there appears to be one that is of a weak institution. Don't you believe that the decision to go hard is to save the image of ECOWAS and to also prove that ECOWAS can make these tough decisions when it needs to?
Well, I don't think so. I don't think that the leadership, what do you call it, their inability to return Mali to constitutional rule and all that. The truth is that, let me put it bluntly, the leaders are afraid for themselves and their positions they occupy. I tell you what, Alassane Ouattara has been sent as a member of the delegation that went into some of these countries that there were coups. When we know that he himself did a constitutional coup in his country, Adama Barrow and the rest have done worse than we are seeing. I don't support coup at all. And our situation is different from what is happening in Francophone West Africa. So I would say that ECOWAS is weak because, you know what, the leaders largely have not been able to speak to their other colleagues who are changing the constitution left and right. Go to Niger. Niger, the second poorest country in the world, when they have mineral resources that could have been used to turn the country around. My mind is that are the leaders telling us that the citizens of ECOWAS, because we have probably, some of them, we didn't put them there, some of them, we put them there, they will decide what probably the rest of us don't want in a manner that will destroy this country. And so my mind is that we need to tread cautiously as a country first, and we need to tread cautiously as a sub-region. Because whatever happens in Niger would happen in Ghana. What is happening in Burkina Faso. Every now and then, you have asylum seekers crossing to Sisala, crossing to other places. We have not been able to deal with our issues in Boku. Boku is still on fire. So mine is that we need to tread cautiously.
Thank you so much, Doc. We'll leave it here for now. And